Ever since Prime Minister Narendra Modi assumed office, he has been taking efforts to formalize the Indian economy. He took three major steps. The first was demonetization. The second was creating one India market through introduction of GST. And the third was introduction and enactment of RERA Act at the center, which was followed up by enactments of respective acts in the state. Now, these three initiatives were of great economic and national importance. These three also were to impact the Indian economy in the short term and in the long term. The short term impact we felt immediately because after the introduction of these three reforms or three major steps, the economy went on a slow mode. And by the end of 2019, our GDP growth rate had come down to about 4%. It was natural because the economic transactions, now everyone had to formalize it. There could not be transactions in cash as they used to happen for all these years. And as a consequence, I, I would say it impacted the economy and eventually the growth rate of the Indian economy, which came down sharply to 4%. When the economy had adjusted to these things, these acts, I always call this adjustment as rebooting of the economic sectors of the Indian economy. COVID struck us and it impacted across the sectors, across the country in a severe manner. And the growth rate was negative. Unemployment rose to new heights. And for the first time in post independence, we saw workers from different states returning to their home. This was a major situation, challenge, not only for the government, but also as a society. And on the background of all this, the Modi government has continued to consolidate its initiatives. And despite a severe second wave, we carried out several initiatives and we also successfully undertook world's second largest vaccination program. And that vaccination program has stood us in good measure. As a consequence, for the last 6 to 8 months, the economy has stabilized and we have achieved the pre-pandemic levels, though by a very, very small percentage, as the economic survey says, just by 1.13 or 1.15%. But then this is a major achievement, according to me. And on the background of all these factors, the budget that was presented today has laid out a path of growth for the Indian economy. It takes care of every possible segment. Let us just look at the few, I would say, major areas that they are going to concentrate. Number one, they are concentrating on logistics, highways, ports, generation of electricity, making available water to everybody, in a way ensuring that all basic needs of the society and the economy are being met. The Gati Shakti program is one of the unique, and it's an integrated approach across the states. This is one area which is going to help the economy bounce back very quickly as we see India coming up with these new assets in a calibrated and in a, I would say, not only calibrated but also, I would say, in an organized manner, which one supports the another. Just as they announced today that the coastal roads would be connected to railways. That's one point only which I would say. The second major impact, as we see, is the Government of India empowering NABARD to finance startups coming up in the agricultural sector or allied agricultural sector. This will not only improve efficiency but also eventually increase productivity, consequently giving better returns to a rural community, including farmers. Now, this is something very important that has been, as a step that has been taken. The third point which I would like to make is about the defense sector. For the first time, more than 65% of our budget will be spent on products that would be manufactured within India. This will not only give a boost to the MSMEs and other industries in the country, but would also ensure restricted outflow of foreign exchange. Now, this is very important. The Make in India process, which was started immediately after the Prime Minister Modi took over the reins of government, has now started yielding results. We all must have noticed that we have made significant gains in the Make in India segment, and very active policies are being pursued across the sector. And we see the results. For the first time after many years, India has recorded a growth of 50% additional business through exports. Now, this is something outstanding. And the way a new structure has been created to deal with our NPAs is something unique. As a consequence, the banks will have more leeway to lend, and that is what is absolutely necessary. Everyone must have noticed that for the first time in several years, there is no mention of recapitalizing the public sector banks. And that has been possible because the bad assets, the NPAs, are being transferred out of the bank, and the banks will now have more than adequate capital to further extend loans in the country. MSME segment will get substantial support, I'm sure, with this new initiative. And as we go ahead, the government is also very conscious, and it is taking steps for inclusive growth. You must have noticed in the budget speech that out of 110 aspirational districts, we have achieved 95% progress in about 90 districts. Now, this is something very important. These were the districts which were one of the most backward areas in our country. And the population over there was adversely affected as a consequence. And a large population in these districts was naturally below the poverty line. Now, concentrating on almost 110 districts for rapid development and growth shows the commitment of the government towards inclusive growth. One more area to support the inclusive growth, which I notice, is that the government is now starting. I couldn't hear it properly, whether it was 100 channels or 400 channels of TV to be to public to broadcast educational programs in local languages across the country, because not everybody in our country have the wherewithal and the means to have a Android phone or a tab or a iPad when things were difficult. So a lot of things will happen now through the broadcast, educational broadcast that would come through, and it would ensure education to the poorest of the poor. Now, this is a major, I would think, initiative which the government is now taking. We are a large country, and despite a very large number of branches, we still have not been able to reach out to the every possible village. A scheme has today been announced which will lay down optical fiber network to every village in the next 2 or 3 years. This connectivity will not only provide access to the local people, but it will also go a long way in financial inclusion. We need an institutions in our country which will help accelerate the financial inclusion. The decision of the government of India to connect all its post offices across the country with a CBS solution is something very, I would say, which deserves special congratulations, and it will make available the benefits to remotest village of the country. And in the speech, the FM also said that through post offices and the accounts that the local population will have in their respective post offices, they can either receive money or transmit money. Microfinance always is considered successful when one is able to open account, maintain deposits, and also receive and transmit deposits. Now, this is going to be very useful. I believe this once this happens, making credit available to smallest of the small through banks, through NBFCs, to small finance banks, and several other institutions, even a network of cooperative credit societies like primary agricultural societies and some of the primary milk societies who are engaged in thrift and credit activities. We shall be able to provide credit linkage to a host of new villages, to a population which never had any access to financial support. This is also going to be a very revolutionary step, and that is the need of the hour. Perhaps we all know that the credit and the GDP ratio in our country is low. It is just 50%. Most of the developed countries, for most of the developed countries, this ratio is almost 100% or a little more. It is about 300% in China, but let us forget about China. But gradually, this ratio has to increase. India depends on organized financial institutions and banks for the growth. We do not have capital at individual levels, or we have very little capital that may not be enough. And hence, providing connectivity, providing access to organized financial system is one of the major things I feel is going to get a good result for the company, for the country as we move towards achieving the status of $5 trillion economy, and also India becoming self-reliant, Atmanirbhar. Thank you.
This year's budget, इसका focus है on citizen empowerment and promoting inclusive growth and development. ये दोनों ही मुद्दे cooperative feeling से जुड़े हुए हैं, because spirit of cooperation is exactly the same: promotion of inclusive growth, development and welfare of citizen. ये दोनों, ये जो तीन चीज है, ये तीनों चीज फोकस है इस ईयर के बजट के. एंड ऑल दिस लाइक एग्रीकल्चर में, बिकॉज कोऑपरेटिव को आपको इस तरह देखना होगा, कोऑपरेटिव में केवल कोऑपरेटिव इंस्टीट्यूशन नहीं है, प्रमोशन ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव फीलिंग, कलेक्टिव स्पिरिट, ऑल दीज आर पार्ट ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव. इस साल का बजट, फॉर एग्जांपल इन एग्रीकल्चर, इट्स फोकसिंग ऑन प्रमोटिंग नेचुरल फार्मिंग, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग, देन एग्रीकल्चर के ग्रोथ को प्रमोट करने. ये सारा का सारा चीज कोऑपरेटिव फोकस्ड है, बिकॉज द मोमेंट वी मूव टुवर्ड्स नेचुरल फार्मिंग एंड ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग, तो हम पूरे सेक्टर के जो एक एक एक्टर हैं सबको यूनाइट करेंगे, बीट रेजिड्यू, फार्म रेजिड्यू या कैटल वेस्ट हो, या जो वेस्ट है, ऑर्गेनिक वेस्ट है, ये सब कुछ चला जाएगा फिर से फील्ड में. सो ऑल दीज कंप्लीट साइकिल विल इन्वॉल्व ह्यूमन एट एवरी स्टेज. तो ये जो बजट है इस बार का, वो बेसिकली ह्यूमन सेंट्रिक है, और ह्यूमन सेंट्रिक है तो कोऑपरेटिव सेंट्रिक हो गया. देन फाइनेंशियली एंड फिजिकली ऑल्सो wonderful announcement has been made for cooperative sector. One is that minimum alternate tax के मामले में corporate और cooperative को at par कर दिया गया है. This has been demand of the sector for pretty long time. Despite all fiscal constraint, we have to congratulate Honorable Finance Minister that she had this vision, and she has taken a bold step to equate cooperative at par with corporate. इससे भी बेहतर एक अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है जो सरचार्ज के मामले में. कोऑपरेटिव हैविंग इनकम फ्रॉम 1 करोड़ टू 10 करोड़, उसका जो सरचार्ज है वो घटा के 12% से 7% कर दिया गया है. ये इनकरेज करेगा कोऑपरेटिव को. छोटे छोटे जो स्मॉल फार्मर के कोऑपरेटिव हैं, आर्टिजन कोऑपरेटिव हैं, या इस तरह के जो बुटीक कोऑपरेटिव्स हैं, which are the need of our, we need number of cooperatives, because cooperative pervades all sector, which are unorganized, which are not within the so-called organized corporate fold, and it's a vast section covering almost 90% of its population. इस सब के लिए हमें बड़े बड़े मेगा कोऑपरेटिव की जरूरत नहीं है, छोटे कोऑपरेटिव की जरूरत है, लोकेशन स्पेसिफिक, पर्पस स्पेसिफिक, एक्टिविटी स्पेसिफिक. तो इस तरह के कोऑपरेटिव का एक तो फॉर्मेशन को इनकरेज होगा, क्योंकि टैक्स रेट कम हो गया, सरचार्ज कम हो जाएगा. तीसरा जो मुझे सबसे अच्छा लगा, एंड इट्स रियली हर्टिंग देख के, कि मिनिस्ट्री फॉर कॉर्पोरेशन, एक तो यही बहुत बड़ा अनाउंसमेंट था लास्ट ईयर गवर्नमेंट का. आई थिंक वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट अचीवमेंट फॉर द सेक्टर इन पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस एरा, कि हमें नाउ सेंट्रल लेवल पर एक सेपरेट मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेशन विच विल बी फोकसिंग ऑन डेवलपमेंट ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव इन द कंट्री. एक कंसोलिडेटेड, एक सेंट्रलाइज प्लानिंग होगी, जिसके तहत कीपिंग इन माइंड एंड स्पिरिट ऑफ दिस कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म एज वेल एज स्टेट लिस्ट में अभी सब्जेक्ट ऑफ कॉर्पोरेशन, स्टिल देयर विल बी अ सेंट्रल फोकस ऑन द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव, और नेशनल लेवल पे क्या ऐसा होना चाहिए which will promote cooperative all through the country. अभी क्या है, कोऑपरेटिव किसी किसी स्टेट में तो बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है, कहीं कम काम कर रही है. तो ये जो नया मिनिस्ट्री बना वो बहुत बड़ा अनाउंसमेंट था, और इस साल और भी बजट में कम से कम मैंने देखा है जबरदस्त का अनाउंसमेंट कि इसका बजट एलोकेशन 900 करोड़ हुआ है. लेट मी टेल यू, इससे पहले भी था, कोऑपरेटिव तो था, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर का पार्ट था, तो एलोकेशन अराउंड 100 करोड़ होता था, 100, 105. सो 9 टाइम्स इंक्रीज हुआ है बजट में फॉर द न्यूली फॉर्म मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेशन. सो ये जो 9 टाइम इंक्रीज हुआ है, दैट विल डेफिनेटली पेव द वे फॉर प्रमोशन ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव इन द कंट्री, क्योंकि नाउ द यूनियन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉर्पोरेशन विल फोकस ऑन promoting cooperative, and they have enough budget also for doing this. All these things, I think, फिर अभी स्टार्टअप फंड का एक हुआ है प्रोविजन इन नाबार्ड, ये स्टार्टअप फॉर फार्म सेक्टर। तो फार्म सेक्टर में स्टार्टअप जो भी अब आएंगे वो या तो ये सब कलेक्टिव फॉर्म में ही आएंगे, बी इट इन द शेप ऑफ farm producer companies or farmer producer cooperative. But now there will be, since now there is a new Ministry of Cooperation, there will be a major focus on promoting cooperatives, because जितने ये पैक्स हैं वो सब के सब ऑलमोस्ट यही है, फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर कोऑपरेटिव ही है, और भी बनेंगे। तो ये जो नया ज्यादा एलोकेशन हुआ है, नो इट विल be utilized for promoting, training, creating awareness and facilitating formation of cooperative in the country. तो ये cooperative farmer sector, farming sector के लिए तो बहुत ही वेलकम बजट है, आई थिंक, एंड फ्यूचरिस्टिक है, बिकॉज ये एक अब हमें आत्मनिर्भर गांव और किसान और कृषि की तरफ ले जाएगा, रादर देन आश्रित गांव, किसान और कृषि। और जब भी आत्मनिर्भर गांव, किसान और कृषि होगा तो कोऑपरेटिव मॉडल से ही होगा, देयर इज नो वे, नो अदर वे आई शुड से। तो इसलिए ये बजट का एक जो ब्लूप्रिंट है और रोड मैप है, दैट विल डेफिनेटली इनकरेज फॉर्मेशन ऑफ प्रोफेशनल कोऑपरेटिव इन द कंट्री। This is my initial reaction. Of course, I have to get into detail, but जो मैंने अभी देखा है नटसेल में बजट का, उससे मेरा इनिशियल रिएक्शन यही है कि कोऑपरेटिव स्पिरिट को कंट्री में प्रमोट ये बजट करेगी, कलेक्टिव स्पिरिट एंड कोऑपरेटिव स्पिरिट को। थैंक यू।
Namaskar. Firstly, I would like to congratulate our Honorable Prime Minister and the Finance Minister for one reason, that the elections of UP and Punjab are just few days away from now. And even in such a situation, this budget is totally non-political budget and no political investment has been done in this budget, because it is not the election campaign budget, and therefore keeping in view the economy's growth is the only criteria for this budget. And for that particular reason, this budget has focused on capital expenditure to drive a growth. There is a substantial increase of 35%, or in rupees matter 2 lakhs crore rupees increase in the capital expenditure, and that particular capital expenditure will be mainly focused on infrastructural development. Once the infrastructure development are done, then naturally every rupee spent in that particular infrastructure development or capital expenditure, it gives multiplying effect to the economy. And therefore this budget is focusing on capital expenditure and definitely will give boom to the economic development. The auction of 5G, that particular spectrum, then the national program for mental health, then virtual currency under the tax net, then 400 more Vande Bharat trains in this railway budget. And the infrastructure budget is not only focusing on development of roads or river roads, but they are also focusing on data centers, drones, satellite path. So this is a new way for giving the economic boost to India. So this is a pathway, and this will definitely give growth to this particular non-traditional way of capital expenditure. And in this particular case, what the government has projected is PPP model, that is private public partnership. And under such circumstances, private properties or private persons are also given opportunity to invest. The public money, that is the government money, will be also invested, and accordingly both will join hands together, so that the expertise of private persons and expertise of government in spending will be collaborated in this particular budget. there is a very likely disappointment because of the higher fiscal deficit of 6.4% of GDP in this financial year 22-23. In fact, this is beyond expectation. If at all this is kept to that particular level only, then it is good. But if at all it is increased, then it will probably lead to inflation. In this budget, the growth of GDP is also expected to be 11%. But just now I said that if the inflation factor is say around 4% inflation factor is there, then naturally the GDP growth will be come down from 11% minus 4%. So it will come down to 7%. So it is the government's task to see that the inflation is not increasing. In this particular budget, one very interesting innovation is there, and it is in the form of green bonds. So this borrowing will give effect to minimize the pollution. This budget totally focuses whatever Prime Minister Modi ji has been saying, that self-reliance and Atmanirbhar Bharat. Because to protect the domestic manufacturers, there is increase in custom and import duties in the budget. Specific moves have been given for education and mental health issues, which are very critical because of this pandemic situation continued probably for more than 2 years. This cryptocurrency is now taxed at 30%. I will not go in details of the cryptocurrency modes, but to give example, it is Bitcoin. It is simplest to understand in the form of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin trading and Bitcoin profiteering will be now taxed at the 30% rate. This particular cryptocurrency is giving birth to black money, and therefore the government has come with the solution that why to go for such illegal currencies, then better to start digital currency on own. And therefore RBI is now focusing or will be directed to give focus on such currency which is digital currency. For cooperative movement, there is one good step for cooperation, that the taxation rate has been reduced from 30% to 15%. No doubt it is welcome move. In fact, in the cooperative movement, it is already said that there should not be any taxation, and previously there was deduction under section 80P of the Income Tax Act. The entire deduction is now no more given. However, the reduction in tax will also improve the cooperative movement in the country. Still, there is no level playing field for cooperative banks as such. Why it is so? If at all any cooperative bank comes in trouble, then the government is not pumping in even a single rupee in that particular cooperative bank. I am not saying that where some corrupt cooperative bank directors are playing with the bank money, and if at all they are the instrument to make that particular bank in losses, I am not taking their side. However, in the last 2 years pandemic situation, in reality, the banks are coming in very bad shape because there is increase in NPA movement. So NPA has substantially increased because people do not have money to repay the bank debts. Under such circumstances, if any cooperative bank comes in trouble, then naturally it is expected from the government that the government should pump in the money as it is doing it in case of nationalized banks. So if at all such level playing field is given to the cooperative banks, then naturally the cooperative movement and the banking sector in cooperation will definitely see a beautiful days, and they will give boom to the economy in the rural sector. That's why it is humble request to the government that they should think on this particular thing. Taking around these particular exceptional cases, the entire budget, we can very well say that it is good enough to give the economic boost to the society. Thank you very much.